Coming in at a number 10 spot, we have the elevator game. The elevator game is a mysterious and potentially dangerous ritual that is said to bring you to another world. This game has its origins in Japan and is played by entering an elevator in a public building with at least 10 floors. The player must press specific buttons in a specific order without anyone entering or even leaving the elevator in order to reach this other world. In the other world, electronics do not work, the lights are off, and all that can be seen from the windows is a red cross in the distance. To return back to the original world, the players must repeat the sequence of button presses and be very vigilant of their surroundings. The player must be careful not to look at the woman who enters the elevator on the 5th floor, as she is not human. If someone enters or even leaves the elevator during the ritual, the players must start over. And you must be wondering what the specific ritual is, but if you guys actually want to know about that, search it up, because I'm not going to say it for you guys because I don't want you guys doing this. Because for those who have played, it is said that if they faint or lose consciousness during the ritual, they may wake up in their own home. But they must be careful to examine their surroundings, as it may not be the same home they left. It is important to not attempt this ritual too many times as well, as it can lead to an accidental slipping between both worlds. And it's also worth mentioning that if the woman does not enter the elevator or the players do not reach the 10th floor, they should immediately return to the 1st floor and completely end the game. At a number 9 spot, we have the Rokurokubi, the long-necked demon. The legend of the Rokurokubi is a supernatural creature from Japanese mythology that originated during the Edo period, which is 1603 to 1867. The Rokurokubi is a beautiful woman by day, but at night she undergoes a metamorphosis where her neck extends and she begins to hunt. Some versions of this legend says that this creature can be recognized by small white marks on their neck, or even by the way they sleep with their head far from their body. But in reality, when I see photos of this, all I can think is, if they got a long neck, they're probably this creature. According to folklore, however, there are different explanations for the origin of this creature. Some believe they were once Buddhists who broke the religion's principles and were then cursed as punishment, while other people see the transformation as a supernatural expression of the person's desires. There are also legends that suggest they are Oni, which are these Japanese demons seeking revenge or even simply just playing tricks on humans. And it's also worth mentioning that this creature comes in many different forms, with female ones attacking men and male ones attacking women. The Nukekubi is one of the most dangerous forms, however, known for its detached head that just flies around and attacks its prey. At a number 8 spot, we have Hitobashira. Hitobashira, also known as human pillars, is a custom of human sacrifice that was once practiced in Japan. It involved burying a victim alive under or near large-scale buildings such as dams, bridges, and castles. The practice was believed to appease the gods and protect the structure from natural disasters and enemy attacks. The tradition of human sacrifice in Japan dates back to the construction of aristocratic tombs in ancient times. The use of human pillars persisted in various parts of Japan until the 16th century. Legend has it that the Maruoka Castle, one of the oldest surviving castles in Japan, was built with the help of a human pillar named Oshizu. When the stone wall of the castle kept collapsing, a vassal suggested the use of a human sacrifice, Oshizu, who is this one-eyed woman living in poverty who volunteered to even become this human pillar in the first place. But she did this under one condition, and that one condition being that one of her sons was turned into a samurai. She was buried under the central pillar of the castle keep, and the construction was successfully completed. However, her son was not made a samurai, and thus her spirit has caused moat to overflow with spring rain every single year, and some people even report to see her ghost when they enter and visit this castle. As a result, people erected a small tomb to soothe her spirit, and a poem was even handed down about the rain caused by the tears of Oshizu's sorrow. It is speculated that the instability of the walls of the Maruoka Castle was due to the design of the castle in the first place, which is more indicative of earlier fortresses. On the other hand, the Matsu Castle is also rumored to have been constructed on human sacrifice, buried under the castle stone walls. The victim was a beautiful young maiden who was fond of dancing and is referred to as the Maiden of the Matsu. After the castle was built, a law was passed forbidding any girl to dance in the streets of Matsu because the hill Oshiruyama would shudder and the castle would shake from top to bottom. Although this practice has not been continued, it's just crazy to think that this was actually done, and some of the pillars in Japan actually contain real human sacrifice. At our number 7 spot, we have the Kisaragi station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at Shin Hamatsu station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in the station only go in one direction. She started getting really anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station, but on this specific train ride, they were just much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi station. As she left the train, she was filled with huge anxiety and fear, but as she tried to go back, the train door shut on her. As all this was happening, she was messaging people on this discussion board on 4chan about the station, but when they all replied, they had said that no such station existed in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone through under earlier. She reported strange sounds like drums in the distance, and even a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is extremely dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to go around, but she saw an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the very last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died, and she was never heard from the thread again. At our number 6 spot, we have the 1932 Shirokiya department store. On December 16, 1932, tragedy struck the Shirokiya department store in Japan during their year-end Christmas theme sale. The festive decorations of the season turned into a nightmare as a fire broke out at the toy section just a few minutes before the store was about to open. The fire quickly spread to floors 4 and 8, filling the staircase with smoke and cutting off major escape routes. This left many shoppers and employees stranded on the upper floors, desperate for a way to find safety. Some of those who were trapped made makeshift ropes from clothing or curtains and climbed down to safety. Others were not so lucky. They instead fell to their deaths or even suffocated in the smoke-filled building. In total, 14 people lost their lives and 67 were injured in the Shirokiya department store fire. In the aftermath of the fire, stories and legends began to circulate about the tragedy. One particularly interesting legend relates to the traditional dress of the saleswomen in the store. At the time, it was customary for women who wore traditional kimonos to go without panties. According to this urban legend, some of the saleswomen in kimonos who were trapped on the upper floors chose not to jump the safety nets that had been set up below because they were just ashamed to not be seen below without underwear. While there is no real proof that this legend actually existed, it is said to have led on to an increase in the popularity of Western style panties in Japan, which is both odd and kind of terrifying at the same time. I don't know what to think. In the hub for our list, we have the ghost taxi passengers. After the devastating 3/11 earthquake and tsunami that hit the northeastern Japan coast, sightings of yurei or ghosts have increased drastically in cities like Ishinomaki in Miyagi Prefecture. As these spirits have not been properly put to rest, some may have not even been aware that they are dead and are often searching for a way home. As a result, taxi drivers all over this place have long been subject to ghostly encounters in the form of passengers trying to go home or to a very specific place. This has almost become a norm for taxi drivers around Japan to be asked if they had ever had a ghostly passenger before. Tohoku Gaon University conducted a study called the Awakened Spiritual Earthquake Studies that involved interviews with more than 100 Ishinomaki taxi drivers who had supernatural encounters. Many drivers reported picking up passengers who seemed to be wet or wearing winter coats in the summer, months after the disaster in the cold months of March. Most drivers reported running the meter and having to pay the fee for the vanished passenger. One particular driver reported a chilling story about a man in winter clothing whom he picked up in the summer who asked to be taken to an address that had been destroyed. The driver asked if he was sure that was the address as it was just a vacant lot, to which the passenger replied by asking, "Am I dead?" Number 4, the Red Room Curse. The Red Room Curse is a Japanese urban legend that originated from an interactive Adobe Flash horror animation uploaded to GeoCities in the late 1990s. The legend tells the story of a pop-up ad that appears on the victim's computer screen, displaying a black text that reads, "Do you like?" on a red background. After trying to close the pop-up, it reappears with a new message that reads, "Do you like the Red Room?" before the screen just turns completely red, displaying a list of names of the Red Room victims. This is when the victim senses a mysterious presence behind them before losing consciousness and later being found dead in a room with blood-painted walls. The legend gained notoriety in 2004 when a 12-year-old schoolgirl was murdered by an 11-year-old classmate known as Girl A in Sasebo. It was reported that Girl A was a fan of the Red Room curse animation and had the video bookmarked on her computer at the time of her death. And of course, this incident led to widespread discussion and fear for this curse. Then in 2016, a short film titled The Red Room Curse was released and was inspired by this urban legend, of course. The film brings the legend to life and is sure to give anyone who watched it a chilling experience. So if you guys kind of want to know what this Red Room is about, watch this film because it'll give you all the insights. Number 3, the Ushi-Oni. The world of Japanese mythology is full of terrifying creatures, but none are quite as fearsome as the Ushi-Oni, also known as the Ox Demon. This class of monster is found near bodies of water and is known for its savage and cruel nature. Although there are different types of Ushi-Oni, they all share similar traits that make them unmistakable. Perhaps the most terrifying thing about these monsters is their insatiable appetite for human flesh. Then on top of that, they breathe toxic poison, making them even more deadly. The Ushi-Oni is not to be trifled with as well, and many people who have encountered one have not lived to tell the tale. It is worth mentioning that the Ushi-Oni is not always a solitary creature either. They are known to work together with other yokai or supernatural creatures such as the Nura-Onna and the Iso-Onna. These yokai use their charms to lure unsuspecting men towards the water, where the Ushi-Oni is waiting to pounce and make a meal of its victims. The appearance of the Ushi-Oni is quite unique and interesting as well. Much of them resemble an ox from the head up, but their body is a demonic horror. However, there are many variations on this theme, including one with a spider-like body, another one with a cat-like body, and even one with the body of a kimono-clad human. Pretty terrifying. Number 2, the cursed Kleenex commercial. In 1986, Kleenex released a commercial in Japan that sparked a series of disturbing urban legends. The ad featured a woman in white and an ogre-looking child sitting on a pile of hay and enjoying Kleenex tissues, all while singing the song "It's a Fine Day" by Jane and Barden played in the background. Almost instantly after the commercial was aired, TV stations and Kleenex corporate allegedly began receiving complaints about the ad, with many people finding unsettling. Some claim that the entire film crew met untimely deaths in freak accidents following this, while others said that the child in the commercial had passed away immediately after filming this. There are also rumors that the actress Kaiko Matsuzaka had either passed away or even been committed to a psychiatric hospital. Others claim that when the ad came on at night, the singer's voice in the commercial transformed from that of a young soprano to a raspy old woman's. And the ad was so unsettling to the public that Kleenex eventually pulled it off air and replaced it with a completely different one. At our number 1 spot, we have the Kaikoji Temple. This place has nothing really scary about it, except the fact that it has mummified bodies on display. Okay, maybe it's a bit scary. These mummified figures are known as the Shokuonbutsu, also known as the living Buddha or Buddha mummies. These are in fact real people, and these are the bodies of the priests who belong to the Shingon sect of Japanese Buddhism. All of these mummies we see are priests who made the drastic decision in self-mummification. And I don't know what it is, but there's something about a body that being fully intact for hundreds of years that makes it so creepy. The process for the mummification would actually be very intense as well, and for the first 1,000 days, and it would go a little something like this. For the first 1,000 days, they would do extreme fasting and exercising. Then on the next 1,000 days, they would reduce their diet to a bare minimum in order to fit in this thing. The last 1,000 days would consist of entombment. Basically, many would bury themselves alive, essentially while in a deep state of meditation in order to reach enlightenment. At a number 10 spot, we have the Sugisawa, the cursed village. In Aoyama Prefecture, at the foot of a mountain, there was once a small village called Sugisawa. Story goes that one day a man who lived there went completely insane, and he did just that because within a single day, the entire population of the village was completely wiped out. After the incident, the local government made a decision to try and hide the incident, meanwhile erasing all sorts of evidence that the village ever existed. However, despite the efforts of the government, the story of Sugisawa has survived through the memories of the people who lived in the areas nearby. And according to the legend, there were 3 signs that revealed the path to this village. A warning sign on the road leading to the village, an old rotting shrine gate at the entrance of the village with a stone shaped like human skull beneath it, and an abandoned building with blood stains on the walls. One particular story about the village involves 3 people who stumbled upon the village while driving up into the mountains. They saw the old beat up shrine gate with a stone shaped like a skull beneath it and decided to explore within the village. After passing under the shrine gate, they found 4 abandoned buildings. Inside one of the buildings, they found a large amount of dried blood on the walls. And then suddenly, the woman in the group felt a presence and they all fled in fear. And when they discovered her, she had pure white hair. And when more help was coming, the girl just suddenly vanished. The 2 men were also never found, and ever since, this place has become known as the most cursed village in all of Japan. At our number 9 spot, we have Gozu, or the Cowhead. Gozu, also known as the Cowhead, is a terrifying Japanese urban legend that has been around since the 17th century. The story goes that there is a creature with the body of a man and the head of a cow that can cause all sorts of supernatural and terrifying events simply by telling its story. And guess what I'm doing today? Telling the story. Legend has it that an entire village was traumatized by the tale and isolated themselves out of fear. The central government caught wind of the story, and fearing it would cause another mass panic, they banned any mention of Gozu. However, the story has still managed to spread throughout Japan. One tale tells of a school teacher who used Gozu to keep his students well behaved on a field trip. He promised to tell them the most mysterious and gloomy story he had ever told, but only if they all behaved well. When the teacher finally told the story, many of the students began to scream and cover their ears. But as if he didn't hear or see them, the man continued with the story. His eyes then turned white and his voice became much deeper than it was in the beginning of his story, as if he was possessed by the Gozu himself. The aftermath was a horrific scene. None of the students ever talked about what happened as they were too scared, and even they were confused by the events that just followed. Kinda sucks that I'm talking about Gozu since it's associated with bad luck, but hey, that's my job. I do it for you guys. Number 8, the corner game. The corner game, also known as the square or 4 corners game, is a popular urban legend game that originated in East Asia, more specifically in parts of Japan and or Korea. The whole purpose of the game is to summon a supernatural entity. So as you can tell, what a great game to play. The origin of the game is unclear, with some sources suggesting it is Korean while others believing it is based on a Japanese story. However, it doesn't really matter. The game requires an empty room and the players must turn off all the lights except for the ones in the room. The players must then stand in 4 corners of the room and face the corner. The speaker counts to 3 and each player moves clockwise to the next person's position. During the ritual, supernatural situations such as an extra person or a missing person are said to occur. If there is a missing person, the players must speak their name backwards 3 times and then put their backs against the wall. The person closest to the light should then turn it off and the missing person will reappear. If there is an extra person, the players must gather at the light switch and speak their names backwards 3 times again. After that, they should open the lights and leave the room without speaking to the extra person. And you might be asking, what happens if you speak to the extra person? Well, there's a slight chance you might pass away. So there's that. Have fun playing. At our number 7 spot, we have Yamanoke. In 2007, a creepy story called Yamanoke was posted on 2chan, which is a popular Japanese forum for those who don't know. And as soon as it got uploaded, it quickly gained notoriety all over the site. The story revolves around a white body creature in the mountains that possesses a young girl, and her father is warned that if they don't save her within 49 days, she'll be lost forever. The creature is described as resembling Jamila from Ultraman, and it has since become an urban legend in Japan. And this creature looks like something else. It doesn't have a head, but instead one large human face with a broad grin straight across the chest. And oh yeah, it hops around on 1 leg. The story takes place in the mountains that border Miyazaki and Yamagata prefectures, particularly on Tashiro Ridge. This area is known for its strange events such as ghostly rumors, UFO sightings, and even a rumored underground military base. It's not surprising that a creature like the Yamanoke would fit right in with all these other oddities reported in this area. So what exactly is a Yamanoke? Some people believe it could be an alien that frequently visits Tashiro Ridge, but others think it's most likely a spirit or a kami. Kami are Japanese spirits that inhabit various natural elements, including mountains. They're often associated with Japanese folklore and mythology, and some people believe they have the power to possess humans. Number 6, the purple mirror. Back in the day, there was a young girl who was given a mirror by her mother. The girl loved the mirror so much that she spent most of her time staring at herself in it. She was so desperate to be beautiful that she did everything possible to maintain her beauty. And so every time she looked in the mirror, she felt gorgeous as a result of her hard work. However, after a few years, the girl decided to redecorate and painted the mirror purple. When she looked into it, she was shocked by her appearance. She was dangerously thin and her hair was limp and stringy. The obsessive beauty standards that she had put on herself had had taken a toll on her body now, and now she could see that she was not maintaining her beauty. She was actually sabotaging it. The girl then threw the mirror on the ground, completely shattering it. Then a little while later, she was making the final arrangements for her coming of age party on her 20th birthday when she was caught in a freak car accident. People say that she perished on the scene while whispering, "Purple mirror, purple mirror, purple mirror." And after this was reported, her parents decided to search for this mirror, but they never ended up finding it. The legend has it that if you do not forget the phrase "purple mirror" by your 20th birthday, the same thing will happen to you. Or that if you have a purple mirror, just completely remove it out of your home. Just do it. In the hump of our list, we have Kayoko. Do you remember her? This was definitely a fear for 90% of y'all. The eerie humming sound combined with the black hair covering the face, early 2000s horror peak at its finest. As many of you know, Kayoko is a vengeful spirit who haunts those who enter her home. In the official novel written by Kei Ohishi and based on other Japanese iterations, she spent most of her time with her cat Kuro and was highly antisocial. Then in college, Kayoko met Kobayashi and fell deeply in love with him. She marries another one named Takio Saki, the only person who understands and cares for her during this hard time. As time goes by, Kayoko begins to have feelings for Kobayashi again, which she writes in her journal. Takio then discovers her journal and becomes obsessed with the idea that Kayoko is cheating on him with Kobayashi, or even worse, that their son Toshio might not actually be his. As a result, he violently attacks Kayoko, leaving her paralyzed and unable to move, before finally snapping her neck and crushing her throat. So painful and torturous that she becomes an Oliro, a vengeful spirit who haunts those who enter her home. And if you've seen the movies, you definitely don't want to enter her home at any cost because there's nothing good that comes out of it. Number 4, the Honeona. In Japanese mythology, the Honeona or bone woman is a spirit whose face, hands, and neck appear to be that of a young attractive female. However, the rest of her body bears no flesh at all. Hence, her bone name. It's said that she uses her beauty to seduce unsuspecting men, where she would lure them into a dark, isolated area. I bet these guys are thinking that they're the man, alone in Japan with a pretty girl. However, this is exactly what Honeona wants them to think. Because when they're alone, she reveals her true form and then sucks their life force energy, leaving them as a pile of dust. In other accounts, the Honeona are said to be spirits of a young woman who cannot move on from their past lovers. To their loved ones, they look normal, but for everyone else, they appear as the bone woman. Regardless of who is in front of them, they will suck up their life's energy, causing illness or all sorts of other tragedies in the process. I don't think I'll be ever falling in love with a pretty girl ever again, especially in Japan after seeing this one. Number 3, the ghost of the tsunami. The second season of the popular show Unsolved Mysteries has taken viewers to Ishinomaki, Miyagi, Japan, where a 9.1 magnitude earthquake followed by a powerful tsunami struck in March 2011. The survivors have struggled to cope with the disaster's aftermath, but the 4th episode of Unsolved Mysteries, titled Tsunami Spirits, uncovers the story of the victims themselves. Multiple people in the area reported supernatural encounters with ghosts who were looking to find their way home after the disaster. Sociology graduate student Yuka Kuru was writing a paper in the months after the tsunami struck, focused on the experience of taxi cab drivers in the region who were convinced that they had given rides to ghosts. Kudo spoke to more than 100 taxi cab drivers in the stricken area, and 7 were forthcoming with their experiences. The episode also features Reverend Taiyo Kanada, a Buddhist monk who worked with people who claimed to be possessed by the spirits from the tsunami. Richard Lloyd Perry, in his book Ghosts of the Tsunami, Death and Life in Japan's Disaster, summarized the experiences of Takashi Ono, who lived miles away from the tsunami but became possessed after driving to the beach to survey the devastation. The increased sightings of ghosts after the tsunami were theorized to be the result of PTSD, but it's just crazy to think that multiple people had similar experiences after this devastating event. It's probably ghosts. Number 2, the Kune Kune. The legend arose in Japan where sightings of a creature are reported in rice fields or in an open sea. The creature resembles a tall white mannequin made of fabric, almost like an inflatable tube man. There's a story where one summer, 2 brothers decide to visit their grandparents in the countryside. They were playing outside when they noticed a figure in the distance, wiggling in the wind. But when the wind stopped, the figure kept on wiggling. Curious, the older brother took binoculars to see the figure, but as he did, he stopped breathing and turned blue with sweat running down his entire body. The younger brother asked what he saw, and the older brother responded that, quote, "It's better not to know." But the voice that came out was not his brother's. Later that day, the older brother was found laughing uncontrollably, wiggling in the fields similar to the creature he saw earlier. The family was terrified and decided to leave the farm, but leave the older brother behind with the grandparents. But as the family was leaving, the little brother looked out at his window at his older brother in the field, and all he could see was his brother laughing with somewhat a sad smile on his face. And guess what? He was still wiggling. A little while after seeing this, the younger brother would begin to show symptoms of cold sweats and uncontrollable laughter. And as the family moved into the new house, the younger brother would end up in a field wiggling just like his brother. Number 1, the Peko-chan. Peko-chan is the mascot of the Milky Candies, but her story is more sour than sweet. The story goes that Peko-chan was actually based on a young girl who passed away during the 1940s. The legend goes that during World War II, there was a huge food shortage in Japan, and because of this, many people, including women and children, were starving to death. So Peko-chan's mother decided to cut a piece of her arm off and even offered it to Peko to eat. This is the moment where Peko-chan discovered how tasty human flesh was. In fact, she had never tasted anything so good in her life. She couldn't resist with just a piece, so she decided to kill her mom and eat her entire body. And ever since, she's been constantly craving human meat, living the rest of her days as a cannibal. In the logo, it said that she keeps her tongue out because she's licking her mother's blood off her cheeks. And if that wasn't enough, the company's slogan is directly translated to "Milky tastes like a mama." Guess I'm never eating these candies ever again, especially if I decide to visit Japan. At a number 10 spot, we have the Silent Hill series. Probably the most iconic one on this list, the Silent Hill series is one of the most disturbing nightmare situations in a game. The music, the atmosphere, the story, the monsters. It seems like this game took over the horror genre and just made it its own. Silent Hill was published by Konami back in 1999. It is a psychological horror franchise, and much of the game deals with the actions people take and the way they justify it using guilt, anger, or manifesting it to be something bigger. So just to make things clear, the first 4 games of this series were created by Japanese developers, and this includes Silent Hill, Silent Hill 2, Silent Hill 3, and Silent Hill 4: The Room. Konami Computer Entertainment Tokyo had various developmental groups, and Team Silent was the one who developed these specific 4 games. At a number 9 spot, we have Fatal Frame series. If you were looking for a game that implements Japanese culture, folklore with horror wrapped up in a nice story, then maybe Fatal Frame is for you. Fatal Frame, or Zero in Japan, is a survival game horror franchise with 5 installments, 2 spin-offs, 2 special editions, and a whole remake. These horrific games were developed by Japanese video game developers Tecmo, who has also released games like Dead or Alive, Deception, or Star Force. The game has you playing as a single character walking around a haunted location looking for clues and fighting ghosts with only a camera. It's called the camera obscura, and it's able to take pictures that normal humans can't see, kind of like a third eye to see spirits. Set in the 1980s Japan, this game takes place in Himura Mansion, where it's said that every 10 years a ritual involving sacrificing a young girl would take place. They would do this by detaching her from all worldly needs before sending her to the afterlife. Except 1 year it all failed because the young girl fell in love. This caused the family to believe they had dishonored themselves and the family, in which caused each and every single one of them to take their own life away by a traditional Japanese katana. Now their souls are trapped in this mansion for you to explore. At number 8 spot, we have The Evil Within. This is a game that is a very skilled reliant game in that every action and decision you take will actively change the world around you. So at times this game is pretty terrifying. The Evil Within, or Cycle Break in Japan, is a survival horror game developed by Tango Gameworks and published by Bethesda Softworks. It was released in October 2014 and released virtually on every single platform including PC, PlayStation, and Xbox. I'm sorry, Nintendo users. The story follows a guy named Sebastian who has to navigate himself through different chapters filled with these horrifying creatures and realistic needs, such as the need for resources in this game. Trust me, you need to find resources. But other than that, the real horror of this game comes from the whole atmosphere it sets in the Beacon Mental Hospital where a mass murder took place, and the psychological effects you get with every decision you make. At number 7 spot, we have Yamarari Night Alone. Yamorari is a puzzle-solving survival horror game developed by Nippon Ichi Software. The game I will be talking about is only one game of the Yamari series. Being released in October of 2015, the game received a lot of international praise. The story follows 2 young girls, Yu and Haru, who are headed home before they got separated by a vicious attacker. As the 2 get lost, they have to navigate themselves back home, but the path they travel is much more terrifying than their usual. You will be playing as both the girls, and each decision you make will impact the other girl. The The way this game uses sound effects and lighting to emphasize their scares gives them a spot on this list for sure. Not to mention the unique and interesting ways to get through each of the stage of this game. This game is really worth the buy. At number 6 spot, we have The Calling. I kinda threw shade at Nintendo on my last point, so I had to mention one of their exclusives on this list. We have the game The Calling, or Kuroki Kokushin as it is in Japan. This survival horror game was developed by Hudson Soft and released on November 19, 2009. This game is extremely underrated on this list, and I personally think it deserved a spot for a lot of you guys to notice, at least in the horror section of gaming. The game would use your Nintendo Wii controller as a telephone and would randomly ring throughout the game. On the other end would be spirits, ghosts, demons, which is already scary of a concept if you ask me. Obviously the controller could also be used to interact with objects around, but definitely the phone idea, props to them. The game follows a group of characters exploring mnemonic abyss, which is a place between life and death, and from here they experience restless ghosts and creepy phone rings from spirits. On the hump of our list, we have Bloodborne. Created by the renowned Japanese developer From Software, Bloodborne is just as hard as its counterparts Dark Souls and Elden Ring from the same developer. Except Bloodborne definitely takes its spot as one of the most terrifying games along with its extreme difficulty. Released as a PS4 exclusive back in 2015, Bloodborne follows a hunter who's in charge of cleaning up the mess that a disease has caused on the citizens of Yharnam, causing them to be these oversized, superpowered humans, almost godlike. And yeah, lots of blood, lots and lots of blood. This gothic-inspired city harbors some of the most cruel enemies ever shown in horror games, along with the creepy atmosphere that follows you throughout the entirety of the game. My favorite thing about this game that sets them apart from others on this list is definitely their combat system. There are so many different weapon types that only add up to so many different combat strategies. This game allows you to go crazy and pull off combos, which is always something fun to do. And this definitely beats poking and weaving around the whole time. Dark Souls. At number 4 spot, we have Shadow Corridor. This survival indie game was created by a single man named Kazuki Joma, using the infamous Unreal Engine 4. It was released as a free-to-play on June 21st, 2017. In the beginning, you start off as a normal person walking happy across multiple old valleys of Japan. This until you get into a tunnel that transports you into a nightmare in a pure Spirited Away style. Inside this nightmare, you have to confront a world full of apparitions, no mask, and demons and creatures. As well, you have to collect items to survive and get to solve the mystery behind this nightmarish world. Another great point in favor of this game is that in order to unravel all of its secrets, you're going to be spending lots of hours finding hidden items, hidden rooms, collecting all special items, running against the clock to finish the stage, all sorts of things. All the way at a number 3 spot, we have Siren Blood Curse. Siren Blood Curse, or as it's known in Japan as Siren New Translation, is a stealth-based survival horror game developed by Sony's Japan studio. It was exclusive for PlayStation, so once again, Xbox fans have another one of those games that will never see the light of day. The game was later released in 2008. The story begins on August 3rd, 2007 and focuses on an American television crew that arrives in Japan to investigate and document the legend of Hanuda, a vanished village where human sacrifices are said to have taken place 30 years prior. The atmosphere in this game is very unique as well, and at a time in this game the Japanese village was stuck in a hell-like time loop and would often go split screen to show the two worlds of the living and the dead. The game was a remake of the American version, so it used a lot of Caucasian characters and voice actors despite its Japanese origin. This is definitely another unrated Japanese horror game on this list, and if you like being sneaky and quiet in a horror game, this one might be for you. At a number 2 spot, we have The Corpse Party. Another one of this list created by a single person. Corpse Party was published in 1996 spring, and it was made by 22-year-old college student Makoto Kaduan. Corpse Party is a survival horror game and adventure game that follows a group of friends performing a ritual, except this would instead send them to another dimension where they would be tormented by the ghosts of other children. During the game, you must be able to go through psychological and emotional screwing scenes and a story that will make you question your insanity at times. Along with a terrifying ambience, constant jump scares, unique puzzle, this game will definitely not disappoint. The reason I love this game so much is because it actually plays out like a visual novel almost. The character development and dialogue is what pushes this game to be one of the top contenders in the horror genre. And a great thing I appreciate is that they do add light moments to add relief, as this game will literally have you scared the whole time you play it. At our number 1 spot, we have the Clock Tower 3. I couldn't finish this list without adding one of Japan's most iconic horror games, Clock Tower 3. Clock Tower 3 is a survival horror game that is co-produced by both Capcom and Sunsoft and made as an exclusive for PlayStation 2. The plot follows 14-year-old Alyssa as she tries to escape the menacing clock tower and the slaves inside of it. The majority of the game is played without the use of a weapon, relying instead of your ability to run through or dodge foes. The game has good graphics, mood, and scripting despite some repetitive mechanics and overall commercial failure. The fear comes from a general lack of ability to defend oneself and the ensuing dependency on fleeing or figuring out puzzles. The pressure is to come up with a solution as soon as possible before it's too late. Coming in at number 10, we have The Cursed Poem, or Tamino's Hell. Published by Japanese poet Seijo Yasu, it's said that one of his poems named Tamino's Hell is cursed and could kill or haunt people if read out loud. So just not to die, I'll be playing it safe and I'll just show you the poem rather than reading it. Yeah. In 1974, Japanese filmmaker Terayama Suji directed a movie based on Tamino's Hell. He ended up passing away in 1983. This is where people first believed the movie was cursed, since the poem was used and read in the movie. As time went by, people began forgetting about the incident, but then in 2004, one Japanese writer published a book based on the poem, saying, "If you by chance happen to read this poem out loud, after you will suffer from a terrible fate which cannot be escaped." It said that even hearing someone say the poem out loud could lead your life into disaster or even death. So let's read it out loud. I'm just kidding, everyone relax. Nowadays this poem is feared internationally, but for those who remain skeptical, come on, give it a read. At number 9, we have Hitori Kakarenbo, Solo Hide and Seek. The name directly translates to one man hide and seek, and as for the name suggests, it's a game where one person plays hide and seek. The instructions are thorough, so bear with me. Here's what you need to play. A stuffed toy with arms and legs, a red thread and a needle, rice, nail clippers, a box cutter, and a cup of salt water. The process is kinda complicated, so bear with me. To start, make sure you're home alone. Cut open the toy and take out the stuffings, replacing with rice and fingernail clippings. Sew it back with some red thread. Give the toy a name and be sure it's not your own. Then go find yourself a hiding place like a closet and place your saltwater cup in there. After that, go to the bathroom and fill your tub with just enough water to submerge the doll. Now you just have to wait until 3 a.m. When the time hits, go to the bathroom, look at the toy, and say, "You're it." Count to 10 and then go back to the bathroom, pick up the toy, and say, "I found you," 3 times. Easy, right? As you're in the bathroom, stab the toy and put it back in the water. Tell the stuffed animal, "You'll be it." Now it's your turn to hide where you left a glass of salt water. At this point of the game is where things get a bit creepier. People report hearing voices, footsteps, and the TV may turn on and off. Wait a bit until it's complete silence again. Take a sip of the water and hold it in your mouth and bring the cup with you as you look around for the toy. At this point, the toy is no longer in the bathroom, so you need to search the whole house for it. Do not leave the house, do not turn off the lights, and keep everything locked, and be sure to finish the game under 2 hours or the spirit will become too powerful to stop. When you finally find the toy, spit the water out, pour the rest of the cup on the animal, then say, "I won," 3 times. Finally, be sure to burn the toy within 1 to 2 days. I don't know what would compel someone to play hide and seek alone, but there are the instructions. Sealing our number 8 spot, we have Gasha Dokuru. The Gasha Dokuru, or giant starving skeleton, is a rageful, mythical Japanese yokai that is said to be 15 times the size of a normal human, which could be around 90 feet tall. Shaq? This entity is born where there's a large amount of human bodies, whether it be a mass grave or a battlefield. This is where these spirits become angry due to the fact that they can't get proper burials. This usually happens from events such as a war, a famine, or plagues. Then the bones of these angry spirits form together, creating this one large skeleton. Despite their large stature, they still manage to sneak up on humans. They crush them in their hands and bite off their head to drink their blood. This creature will definitely give Attack on Titans a run for their money. The scary thing is, they don't even need to kill people nor drink their blood. they simply just enjoy doing it. They usually roam around midnight using the darkness as their cover. The only way you would know one is near you is from the sounds of bones rattling or strange ringing. Since Japan has less wars and plagues, these creatures have not been spotted. But when it does, I wonder how much gashadokuru will rise. Showing that even our bathroom stalls aren't safe, at number 7 we have akamanto. Think twice before using certain bathrooms in Japan, as you might run into akamanto. Akamanto is a spirit in Japan that is said to appear to people in bathroom stalls, usually the last stall of all stalls. And definitely be sure you have toilet paper in your stall, because that's how akamanto gets his cue to enter. He is described as wearing a long red cloak with a mask to cover his face. He'll give you a choice between red and blue paper, and your answer will decide your fate. If you choose a red paper, he will cut your throat, causing all of your clothes to turn into a bright crimson color. However, the other option is not any better. If you choose the blue paper, he will strangle you, making your face turn blue. So you basically have zero chance, because if you try to pick another color that he doesn't offer, he will kidnap you and bring you to his lair where it's unknown what he'll do to you. So is there any way to make it out alive? Well, the best way to answer akamanto is to simply say, I do not need paper, and he will leave you alone. Hey, I know you'll be stuck with no toilet paper, but at least you won't die. At least that's a good trade. The number 6 spot, we have Teke Teke. Teke Teke is a story of a woman named Kashima Raiku who lived in the city of Hokkaido, Japan. One night as she was waiting on the Meishin Expressway, a group of men decided to beat her up and leave her on the floor, barely conscious. With her little strength, Raiku would frantically call out for help, but since it was so late at the night, there was nobody around. After coming to the realization that no one was going to help, she began crawling her way back home. As she was crawling, she noticed that she was on a train track and got struck by an oncoming train. The train ended up severing her body in half. Legend says that she is still crawling with only half of her body, while making the sounds of teke teke. Right in the hump of our list, we have the Kisaragi Station. In 2004, a 2chan user named Hasumi posted on a thread asking for help because she got on the wrong train at the Shin Hamamatsu station. This was rather strange because she usually caught the same train after work, and trains in this station only go in one direction. She started getting anxious because she remembered the stops only being a few minutes between each station. But on this train, they were much longer. They even went through a tunnel, but her usual line didn't go through any sort of tunnel. She walked to the front of the car to ask the conductor for help, but the curtain was closed and no one answered. She then knocked on the door, but that's when the train suddenly stopped at Kisaragi Station. As she left the train, she was filled with anxiety and fear. But as she tried to go back, the train's door shut on her. She told the other users on the discussion board of the stations, but they had all said that there was no such station located in Japan. She decided to exit the station and walk back along the tracks, even back through the tunnel she had gone under before. She reported hearing strange sounds like drums in the distance and a voice telling her that walking on the tracks is dangerous. As she grew more afraid, she turned back to see an old man with one leg, which then slowly disappeared right after. When she finally got out of the tunnel, a man came up offering for help and to drive her to the nearest station. This is when she posted on the thread for the last time, saying that the man was muttering to himself, then her phone died. She was never heard on the thread again. Chilling at our number 4 spot, we have Peko-chan. Peko-chan is the mascot of the Milky Candies, but her story is more sour than sweet. The story goes that Peko-chan was actually based on a young girl who passed away during the 1940s. The legend goes that during World War II, there was a huge food shortage in Japan. Because of this, many people, including women and children, were starving to death. So Peko-chan's mother decided to cut a piece of her own arm off and offered it to Peko to eat. This is the moment Peko-chan discovered how tasty human flesh was. In fact, she had never tasted anything so good in her life. She couldn't resist with such a piece, so she decided to kill her mom and eat her whole body. Ever since, she's been constantly craving human meat, living the rest of her days as a cannibal. At our number 3 spot, we have the Kone Kone. The legend arose in Japan where sightings of a creature are reported in rice fields or in an open sea. This creature resembles a tall white mannequin made of fabric, almost like an inflatable tube, but deadlier. Other than that, no one knows exactly what it looks like because everyone who saw it either went crazy or has died. There's a story where one summer, 2 brothers went to visit their grandparents in the countryside. They were playing outside when they noticed a figure in the distance, wiggling in the wind. But when the wind stopped, the figure kept on wiggling. Curious, the older brother took binoculars to see the figure, but as he did, he stopped breathing and turned blue with sweat running down his whole body. The younger brother asked what he saw, and the older brother responded that it's better not to know. But the voice that came out was not the brother's. Later that day, the older brother was found laughing uncontrollably, wiggling in the fields. All the way at our number 2 spot, we have Honeona. In Japanese mythology, the Honeona, or the Bone Woman, is a spirit whose face, hands, and neck appear to be that of a young, attractive female. However, the rest of her body bears no flesh at all. It's said that she uses her beauty to seduce unsuspecting men, where she would lure them into the dark and isolated areas. Because when they're alone, she reveals her true form and sucks their life force energy, leaving them as a pile of dust. In other accounts, the Honeona are said to be the spirits of a young woman who had died, but cannot move on from their past lovers. To their loved ones, they appear normal, but for everyone else, they appear as the Bone Woman. Taking our number 1 spot in our list, we have the Okiku doll. Let me start this off by saying that this haunted doll is worse than Chucky. This story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Aikaichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono. His sister loved the doll so much that she even named it after her own name. These two would become attached together like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her, her family put up her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days, they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing, and every time it was cut, it would keep on growing until it reached just above the knees, which happened to be the same place where Okiku's hair stopped. At a number 10 spot, we have the Kifune Shrine. This place is very well known as a beautiful sightseeing spot in Kyoto, Japan, but for many locals, the dark history makes them have a different perspective of the place. Kifune Shrine is known as the birthplace of a terrifying ritual known as the Ishunokoku Mari, which refers to placing a curse on someone by placing a nail through a straw effigy, which is sort of like a voodoo doll. Then you nail it onto a tree around the hours of 1 to 3 a.m. We did a 3 a.m. video, so you already know how cursed that time is. If anyone is caught watching this ritual, the person conducting the ritual must eliminate that person, or else the curse will reflect back onto them. The performer usually wears a white kimono, sandals, and places 3 burning candles on top of their head. If you visit the shrine to this day, you will find many trees with holes on it, presumably from the nails of those attempting this scary ritual. At our number 9 spot, we have the Awashima Shrine. There is no doubt Japan is a very beautiful place, meaning that most of the shrines I mentioned on this list are very visitable. So I had to mention Awashima Shrine to change your mind on that. This shrine contains over 20,000 dolls who are believed to be possessed from its past owners. The dolls will be left at the shrine as an offering from women to pray for fertility and for safe birth. Come on, look at this place. Tell me you would go here willingly. According to legend, Empress Zingu was journeying home from a war overseas. As she was on her way back home, a huge storm took over the seas and broke the boat partially. This caused the Empress to pray to the gods, and apparently they brought her back safely to Tomagashina. Here she would build the Awashima Shrine to thank the gods for their service. People believe that these dolls over time would develop souls, so the reason why many donate it is to get rid of the curse trapped inside of these dolls that caused many of the problems and issues within their own life. At number 8 spot, we have the Dashogun Shrine. This shrine was originally built by Emperor Kanmu in 794. It was originally built to break the evil coming from all sorts of directions, whether this be from physical enemies or spiritual beings. This became a place where people would go to pray for protection. Specifically, many would call for the god of the stars, Dashogun. Enshrined at the place are many Japanese figures fighting a beast named the Nu. A Nu is a Japanese yokai described as having the head of a monkey, the body of a raccoon dog, legs of a tiger, and a snake for a tail. Pretty terrifying, right? Because these creatures can also transform into a black cloud and fly all over the place. Back in the early years of its construction, it said that the current emperor sent out these powerful warriors to kill it and make the place peaceful at last. Except many believe the Nu is still out there near the shrine, with reports of seeing the creature in the forest surrounding the area. At our number 7 spot, with the Menenji Temple. Menenji Temple is located in Iwamizawa, Japan, and it was originally built in dedication to the Jodo sect of Buddhism. Despite its spiritual beginnings, the temple is now known for the cursed doll that lives within it. The story starts in 1918 Japan. Older brother Eikichi Suzuki bought a doll for his 2-year-old sister Okiku. The doll had a black bob cut and a traditional kimono on it. His sister loved the doll so much that she would even name it after her own name. These two would become so attached together like no other. But in the following year, Okiku became gravely ill and ended up passing away. To commemorate her family put her favorite doll on her memorial shrine. Everything seemed fine until after a few days they would begin to notice something very strange. The doll's hair seemed to be actively growing, and every time it would be cut, it would continue to keep growing. Eventually her family would move away but chose to keep the doll in the same place, thinking that Okiku would have wanted that. Now it resides in the Menenji temple, where it's said that monks will cut the doll's hair regularly as it keeps on growing. At number 6 spot, we have the Sogenji Shrine. The Sogenji Shrine, also known as a Kappadera, is a Zen Buddhist temple in Tokyo. It got its name from a Japanese mythological entity known as the Kappa. And no, I don't mean that trashy clothing brand. I'm talking about these guys. Kappas are these human-like creatures, small in stature, with webbed hands and feet. It has a turtle shell on its back, and a beak and a saucer on their head, always seem to be filled with water. These creatures would just be known for their troublemaking. They would play games with both animals and humans, and in some cases, the Kappa would impregnate women and drown people in the rivers where they resided. Apparently, when the place was prone to flooding, the people of the area asked for the Kappa for existence, and now many claim that the Kappas are still nearby, claiming the place as their own. There are several statues of the Kappa littered around the shrine, but who knows if one of them turns out to be real. At the hump of our list, we have the Zenkoji Temple. The Zenkoji Temple is a Buddhist temple located in the city of Nagano, Japan. The main temple of Zenkoshi has a dark room created for spiritual purposes and acts like a shrine in a way. This dark room follows a pitch black tunnel underneath the temple that monks had supposedly hid the quote key to paradise. In order to do this, you need to hone your 5 senses and have complete focus while trying to navigate yourself through this area. This area is supposed to represent the journey between death and rebirth. It's very simple to understand how this represents the pursuit of enlightenment, which is only possible once you let go of your physical limitations and your concerns. People think that if you find the key, they will be saved, while others believe that if you fail, you will have a series of bad luck and unfortunate mishappenings. Regardless if you succeed or not, this room is bound to have a terrifying experience regardless. At number 4 spot, we have Mount Osor. This is one of Japan's most sacred sites, and for good reason. It's claimed by many to be one of the entrances to hell. First, the temple lies on top of a volcanic plain, and as you roam the area, you will constantly pick up a scent of sulfur, which is already eerie because this is the smell of ghosts and demons, supposedly. But volcanic reasons also make sense. According to Buddhist monks, they say that this place resembles the descriptions of hell and also paradise, so this is why many believe this is a spirit hub. Also around the area are these little Jizo statues, which were there to guide people who were lost, especially for children to take and keep them for safety. People who have lost their children bring pebbles to the site as an offering for their kids to go easily through the afterlife. Except many of these pebbles are left broken, and many have placed the blame on evil demons in the area. There's also a festival at the shrine where blind women called Itaku bring messages from the afterlife back to the living. So best believe there are quite a few spirits here waiting to be communicated with. At number 3 spot, we have the Owa Nanari Tamaya Shrine. This shrine in Tokyo has one of the most famous ghost stories in all of Japan associated with it. The story goes that Owa was a very pure and faithful woman, married to a terrible man named Tamaya Lemen. This man killed her in order to marry a richer woman. While the accounts on how he killed her vary, this all include poisoning her with terrible consequences to her looks. Obviously, she wouldn't be keen on this whole new marriage thing, and she proceeded to ruin the marriage, making him kill his new wife and her family by making them look like her dead self, and finally killed him too. The shrine was built to represent Owa's angry spirit and it still rests south of the station in Tokyo. At number 2 spot, we're the Kaikoji Temple. This place has nothing really scary about it except the fact that it has mummified bodies on display. Okay, maybe it is a bit scary. These mummified figures are known as a Sokushin Butsu, also known as the living Buddha or Buddha mummies. These are in fact real people, and they are the bodies of priests who belong to the Shingon sect of Japanese Buddhism. All the mummies we see here are priests who made the drastic decision in self-mummification. Just something about a body that is fully intact for hundreds of years that makes it so creepy, right? The process for the mummification would actually be pretty intense. For the first 1,000 days, they would do extreme fasting and exercising. Then on the next 1,000 days, they would reduce their diets to a bare minimum. The last 1,000 days would consist of entombment. Basically, they would bury themselves alive, essentially while in a deep state of meditation, in order to reach enlightenment. At number 1 spot, we have the Taki Shrine. This shrine is consumed in moss but looks very beautiful, but the story behind it completely ruins it. This shrine was established in the Teryaku era of Japan, which was around 900 AD. Legend goes that a man was hunting for yokai and fighting against sorcery in the region. When he was roaming the area, it would slowly get consumed by a dark black cloud. Unable Unable to move further, the man prayed to the gods and fired an arrow up into the clouds. When the arrow came back down, the cloud drifted away, and the spot where the arrow hit is a supposed location of the Taki shrine. Every now and then the mountain will be filled with fog and mist, which only adds to the amazing atmosphere of the nature in the area, but it also has a little bit of creepiness in it. And it's also a time when most of the region's spirits seem to be resting. Many believe that many yokai are resting by the shrine, so it's best to visit this area when there's still light outside, because many people have gone missing when night hits.
Starting off this countdown at number 10, Ise Grand Shrine. Japan is globally popular for its shrine culture and has approximately 80,000 shrines. The most important among all of them is Ise Grand Shrine. It is one of the most expensive temples in Japan due to its architectural magnificence. To maintain the Shinto traditions dating back to the 8th century, this temple is rebuilt every 20 years, and that comes with $1 million price tag. However, you'd think spending that much money on something, you'd want people to see it and enjoy it, but unless you are a member of the royal family, you're forbidden to enter the hallowed halls of this ancient Japanese representation. Number 9, the forest. The Okigahara Forest, also known as the Sea of Trees, sits right along the edge of Mount Fuji, roughly a 2-hour drive west of Tokyo. At the entrance of the forest, you're greeted by a sign that reminds visitors that life is a precious gift from their parents. Okigahara's dark reputation has been around for decades. Legend has it that in the olden times when food was in short supply and the situation grew desperate, a family might take a dependent elderly relative, typically a woman, to a remote location and leave her to pass away. At first, the ghost visitors had claimed they saw in Okigahara were presumed to be the vengeful spirits of the old who had been abandoned to starvation, and the mercy of the elements. But that all began to change in the 1960s. More than 100 people who were not from the area surrounding Okigahara took their own lives there between 2013 and 2015. Countrywide, people who took their own lives there totaled roughly 24,000. These numbers do not include attempts people made. It is not recommended that you visit this place, because even if you're just going to see it and enjoy the scenery, you may get sucked in and you may take your own life yourself. Number 8, Inunaki Tunnel. The old Inunaki Tunnel is a spot of a horrific incident deep within the mountains of Fukuoka. In December of 1988, the charred remains of a man were found within this mountain tunnel. The perpetrators of this gruesome act are reported to be a group of teenage boys. The area also has a history that goes back over 1,000 years as a training grounds for Budapest practitioners, who claimed the area to be a spiritual hotspot of lost souls. These claims were later backed up by a modern spiritualist who visited the mountain area in the aim of recording a television special, but promptly refused to go further due to the foreboding spiritual atmosphere. The tunnel itself has been sealed off with concrete blocks, forbidding entry, but an opening in the top of the tunnel still allows entry for anyone foolish enough to climb over. The tunnel is no longer in use and far off the beaten path, meaning no assistance would be able to reach you in an emergency situation, so it is highly discouraged that you try visiting. Number 7, Takauka Unuma. This is certainly not a place to be visited now, but not for the reason you might expect. The story begins with Japan's rising bubble economy in the 1970s, in a rural northern part of Fukushima Prefecture, but the tale ended prematurely in 1986 and failed dreams never to be truly realized. Allegedly, after a few passings by people falling from the roller coasters, the park was shut down and multiple attempts to reopen the park all failed. Rather than demolish this area, it was just left to rust and fade out of the public consciousness. The decaying and dangerous structures were like a beacon calling out urban explorers who seemed to find the location popular. However, since 2018, the area has been mostly outfitted with solar panels, and all remains of the park attractions have disappeared. The legend still lives on as pictures and stories about the park continue to surface on the internet from time to time. But that is the first and last stop for anyone looking to test their courage in the park these days. Now at number 6, Iwo Jima Island. One of the Bonin Islands in the Pacific Ocean far south of the Japanese mainland, this island has forever been ingrained in the cultural consciousness of a historical battlefield in World War II. However, it is also home to Mount Suribachi, a 161-meter high volcano that is listed as the most dangerous active volcano in the world, according to the University of Manchester. It is said that there is a chance of this volcano erupting sometime in the next 100 years, which would in turn lead to 25-meter high tsunami waves hitting the coast of both China and Japan, leading to a potential death toll in the millions. The ghost stories of it related to the 40-day battle waged on the island, in which many thousands of soldiers on both the US and Japanese side lost their lives. It currently holds a base for the Japanese self-defense forces, and those stationed on the island have reportedly encountered the spirits of the soldiers who lost their lives there many years ago. Whether you would like to or not, it is nearly impossible to visit the island, as it is restricted to military personnel only. Halfway number 5, tattoos. Tattoos in Japan are not often accepted. Yes, as they are legal, you are technically allowed to have them, but if you go into some places, you will be frowned upon or possibly even kicked out if your tattoos are showing. In 1872, tattoos of all kind were prohibited to help give an appearance of civilization in sophistication throughout the country. This resulted in an increase in arrests and tattoo artists moving their shops underground. It wasn't until 1948 that tattooing became legal again. However, the stigma around the art has remained. In 2015, a Japanese tattoo artist was arrested for violating the Medical Practitioners Act. Police visited his tattoo parlor in relation to a criminal case against a pharmacy where the person was listed as a client. Becoming a medical doctor costs a lot of time and money, said the person. Locals and tourists with tattoos showing are in fact banned from entering places like bathing houses, beaches, gyms, hot springs, and pools. So safe to say, cover your tattoos in Japan or you can say goodbye to a fun beach day and working out. Number 4, Nakagasuku Hotel. The ruins of this hotel is among the favorite terrifying attractions in Japan. The hotel was proposed as a luxury resort and just a little away from the castle of the same name. The hotel construction was opposed by a monk who said it would disturb the holy site and graves in the area. But capitalist greed took over and the owner started building it. After several mishaps and workers' deaths, the construction was later stopped. In a bid to restart it, the owner promised to stay overnight at the hotel to prove it was safe, but instead he returned talking crazy in the morning and disappeared off the face of the earth. Even today, people can see lights and feel cold presence in the empty corridors of the hotel. Now at number 3, Mount Osari. This is one of Japan's most sacred sites. Many people are denied entry into this place, and it's for a good reason, because it's claimed by many people to be the entrances of hell. First, the temple lies on top of a volcanic plain, and as you roam the area, you will constantly pick up the scent of sulfur, which is already eerie because this is a smell of ghosts and devils, supposedly. But volcanic reasons also make sense. According to the Buddhist monks, they say this place resembles the descriptions of hell and also paradise, so this is why they believe this is the spirit hub. Around the area, there are these little Jizo statues, which are used to guide people who were lost, especially for children to take and keep them for safety. Parents who have lost their children bring pebbles to the site as an offering for their kids to easily go through the afterlife. Except many of the pebbles are left broken, and many people blamed it on evil demons in the area. They even have a festival at the shrine, where blind women call a taco, brings messages from the afterlife back to the living. So best believe there are quite a few spirits here waiting to be communicated with. Number 2, Hashima Island. Hashima Island in Japan is completely deserted now, but it was once the most densely populated regions on the planet, a hub for undersea coal mining. It was used in that capacity for almost a century, from 1887 until 1974. Around that time, petroleum started to take over and the coal capital of Japan was abandoned. The locals now know it as Gukujima or Battleship Island for its resemblance to such. Its spooky ruins are a trip for only the bravest to take. Now coming in at number 1, Gas Mask Island. South of Tokyo, you'll find Japan's Uzu Islands. On account of the active volcano and huge quantities of sulfur, it continues to emit between frequent eruptions. In the year 2000, according to Atlas Obscura, a series of eruptions caused the island to be evacuated. 5 years later, the levels of gas had disappeared enough for residents to be allowed back, but with a strict stipulation. They had to carry gas masks at all times, ready to be worn at a moment's notice, and they still do, as does everybody that dares to visit. So technically you can visit this place if you want, but you have to be wearing a gas mask to enter, and it is not recommended. Starting out this countdown at number 10, Tag. The opening scene of Tag is one of the most shockingly horrific moments in Japanese cinema, and is a perfect setup for the absolute carnage and confusion that follows. A young girl called Mitsuko finds herself battling between alternate realities, each with a unique set of horrors she must face. There is little to no explanation as the audience gets thrusted into a never-ending spiral of danger alongside Mitsuko, which makes the movie a heart-racing watch. Despite the endless world of horror seen in Tag, it is the true reality revealed at the very end that is the most terrifying. Now, if this movie name sounds familiar, it might be because the movie trended on TikTok around when it came out with the famously terrifying bus scene. We can unfortunately only show a short clip because it's from a movie, but does that scene not just give you goosebumps? Like, holy, talk about intense. Now at number 9, The Ghost of the Hunchback. Hajime Sato's 1965 Toei movie Hayden Samushi Atoko goes by several names in the West: The Ghost of the Hunchback, House of Terrors, and Satan's Pit. Regardless, they are all the same terrifying movie. The Ghost of the Hunchback is about a hunchbacked caretaker who presides over a forlorn mansion inhabited by the ghost of his previous masters. An unbelieving trio, a doctor, his assistant, and his niece, fail to heed the caretaker's warnings and are slaughtered horribly by the jealous occupants. Now moving on to number 8, The Curse. Fans of the found footage style horror need to look no further than Nori or The Curse. The film opens with an introduction to paranormal investigator Masafumi Kobayashi, who has disappeared during the process of making a documentary titled The Curse. The documentary then begins to play as viewers are left to uncover the secrets he left behind. Seemingly disconnected mysteries that involve strange and creepy events are tied together by the discovery of an old ritual that summons a demon named Kagutaba. Noroi is said to be disturbingly realistic, which makes it all the more terrifying. I found out the movie is free to watch on YouTube, but that's if you dare to watch this horrifying film. But it can also be found with better quality on Shudder. Now at number 7, House. The bizarre horror that is House is a hyperactive fever dream that takes place in the most deranged, creepy, haunted house to ever grace the big screen. Nobuhiko Obayashi's twisted fairy tale tells the story of 7 schoolgirls on a summer trip to an aunt's remote estate. The fantasy-like beginning takes a turn so deformed and uncanny that it's difficult to adequately describe. House is overflown with unbelievable scenes, people say. The scenes that take place in the haunted house are as gruesome, but they are just as exciting to watch. The movie came out in 1977. And nowadays, watching older horror movies don't really seem that scary because of all the CGI and everything we have now, but after seeing a 5-second clip of this movie, you're sure to have goosebumps. This movie is one of the most inventive and colorful horror movies to ever exist and truly must be seen to be believed. Now at number 6, Sadeko vs. Keiko. Yes, the vengeful ghosts of Ring and The Grudge are iconic, but if you've ever wondered which ghost is stronger, well, here's a movie that brings them together for the ultimate face-off and answers just that. We follow Natsumi, a woman who watches Sadeko's cursed videotape and realizes it's only a matter of time before Sadeko kills her. She tries to save herself by pinning Sadeko against Keiko, a malevolent spirit who resides in a haunted house, hoping they would kill each other and end the curse. The film takes the best parts of the two movies' antagonists and blends them together, capturing the dread and hostility perfectly. And funny enough, the movie seems very similar to Ring. Well, based on the trailer, that is, because I haven't seen the movie, but after seeing the spooky trailer, I might just have to give it a watch. It's creepy and fun and totally worth the watch, and the movie can be found on Amazon Prime, YouTube, and Shudder. Halfway at number 5, Uzumaki. Based on the horror mangaka Junji Ito's spine-chilling manga of the same name, this film's concept is just as eccentric as it is creepy. It's about a cursed town whose inhabitants are haunted by ominous spirals that drive the townspeople mad, and sometimes to the point where they take their own life. Our protagonists race to break the curse, but can it really be stopped? The strengths here are the ghastly body horror, the lack of standard backstory, lending to the sense of hopelessness, and the nightmarish, surreal imagery. A man crawls into a washing machine, people turn into snails, and your fingertips have spirals. Even the sky is cursed with spiral-like clouds. This is certainly not a town I'd personally want to live in, and based on the trailer, it looks very freaky and cryptic looking. At number 4, Dark Water. This is a classic that forever remains underrated and one of people's personal favorites. Yoshimi is a single mother in the midst of a divorce. To prove she is able to take care of her daughter, she moves the pair into an old rundown apartment building, where the haunting horrors begin. A dripping leak forms on the ceiling, black hair appears in the tap water, and an extremely creepy child ghost. It's chilling with a touching mother-daughter relationship at its heart, but don't let that fool you because this movie is truly terrifying. And fun fact, this is based on a novel by Koju Suzuki, who is also the author of the Ring novels, and was directed by Haido Nakata, who also directed the unbelievably famous and scary movie Ring. Some even say it's Japan's saddest horror movie. Here at number 3, Corpse Party. The movie Corpse Party is based on the horror video game series of the same name. There's also an anime and manga too. It's set in a haunted school and is incredibly dark and blood-curdling, which is right up the alley for most big horror fans. It has everything: blood, gore, mystery, and ghosts. A group of high school students perform a charm called Sachiko Ever After to ensure they'll remain friends forever. Instead, they find themselves transported to a haunted elementary school with resentful spirits, and Sachiko herself, who's actually the psychopathic ghost of a little girl in a red dress. There's also an equally freaky sequel called Corpse Party Book of Shadows. Now coming in at number 2, Ring-You. Ring-You is a cult horror film of legendary status. Its prominence as one of the best horror films to come from Japan has not wavered over for more than 2 decades since its release. Ring-You subjects viewers to a deep-seated psychological attack that leaves them with a mysterious and lasting sense of doom. The story itself is deceptively unassuming. Watch a cursed videotape and die a gruesome death 7 days later. It's a masterful way director Hideo Nakata cloaks Ring-You in growing dread that makes it a superior film. The frightening jump cuts become implanted in your mind, and the metallic screeching will ring in your ears for days after watching. Of course, this one is good, but for me, I really like the newer remakes of Ring, but still, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend this one. Now coming in at number 1, The Grudge. It's impossible to talk about Japanese horror movies without mentioning Ju-on or The Grudge. The movie is disconnecting thanks to its non-linear narrative, but viewers can expect to encounter 2 terrifying restless spirits ready to torment anyone that enters their home. Everything about the film is sure to inflict sheer terror. The Grudge draws on horrors from both the real and paranormal, since the terrible crimes committed become the cause of the restlessly horrifying supernatural events. The creeping sense of a foreboding that builds throughout the movie lingers well after watching. I chose to put this at number 1 because I'm a big horror fan, but most horror movies don't actually scare me. But this one actually kept me up at night. I swear all I could hear when I tried to fall asleep was that creepy noise.